Hi crafters, Raquel here with Paints and Glitter. I welcome you to my channel, and today I am featuring papers and products from Paper Rose Studio, and we're making an explosion box. For this box you're going to need a 4 7/8 inch square piece of card and also 4 pieces at 4 7/8 by 5 3/8. You're going to be scoring these 5 3/8 wide pieces of card at half an inch. So again, you'll need 4 of these, and I do recommend the heaviest weight card that you have. 300 GSM will do, of course. I'm using a blush piece of card here, as you can see that I've cut into these pieces, and I'll be sharing with you momentarily the papers that I'll be using from Paper Rose Studio. They're absolutely adorable. I do have a project share for this, so you can watch that video. I'll have it linked below. Now, these little pieces here that you have already scored, you're going to trim preferably at 45 degrees if you can. I trimmed them a little bit smaller, but I should have done so at the 45-degree angle on each one, and you'll see why. These are going to adhere to that 4 7/8 inch square base. And these are going to be the outer wall of our explosion box. So what you do is match each one on the opposite edge. Just makes it a little bit easier. Make sure that those edges are nice and flush and that you're burnishing every time that you do adhere these. And this is what I meant about that 45-degree angle. It just creates less bulk on the bottom, so you can go ahead and adhere all 4 of these in the same manner, of course, and I am using Deluxe Adhesive by Nuvo, so I'll have that linked below so that if you need some, you can grab a hold of that really good adhesive. So here's the foundation. On that foundation, we're going to add 4 more squares. This is going to be super simple to assemble. The fun part's going to be in decorating all of these, of course. So you're going to need 4 more pieces cut at 4 1/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches. And there you see that. You're going to be scoring these the same way so that you have a little tab that you can use to adhere this to the foundation. So again, you'll be adhering those at a ½ inch on either side, so long as you do it on that 4 3/4 inch length side. So there again, I'm just measuring out the ½ inch so that I have my little tabs, and you can do the same thing where on that little tab right prior to that fold line, you go ahead and cut away a 45-degree angle, fold and burnish all of them. I've already done so here. And now you can add these to the center of your little foundation here that you have already created. Before doing so, I'm actually going to be cutting out a square piece of card that will decorate that portion and then hide the tabs that are already there. So I did cut this down to 4 3/4 inches square just to fit the center here. Now, I did take my scissors and shabby up the edges of this paper, but it was unnecessary. I thought I was going to go with a real shabby chic style on this project, and I changed my mind. So that was the only panel that I did shabby up. And it's of no consequence. It doesn't really impact the project whatsoever. But on top of this now, you can go ahead and add your other 4 panels. However, you're going to see me only add 2 primarily, and you'll see why. But the best way to get an even edge all the way around is to really lay down the paper as you see here and then match up those fold lines so that way you get a nice straight application there. And there are 2, and then you will be adding the other 2, but as I said before, we're not going to do that just yet because I will be creating a special aperture on those. So what I've decided here is to take this gorgeous rose panel, and I just measured it down to make sure that it does fit that outer square. So I did cut these down to 4 3/4 inches square, and you'll need 4 of these. Now the paper collection that I'm using does have 3 of each pattern, so you will be deciding which pattern you prefer to use on the inside versus the outside, etc. But for these 4, you just need them to be 4 3/4 inches square. So now these are going to go right on those outer squares. And as you see, I did select the striped pattern for 2 of them. And by the way, this collection is the Candy Treats. So this collection does have 18 double-sided pattern papers. There's 3 of each, as I mentioned before, and they're 200 GSM, so they have a really beautiful weight. If you've not yet used Paper Rose Studio papers, I highly recommend them. They have a really nice sheen on some of the patterns, and you're going to see a little bit later how they also have alternatives for the embossed die cuts, and there are several others in this collection, so you may want to take a peek at that. So back to these other little smaller squares that we cut out, you're going to select papers that are 4 1/8 inch square to decorate these. So you'll need a total of 4. As you can see here, I did supplement. 2 of them will be white and 2 of them will be from that Candy Treat collection. Super pretty. So on one side is the white, the other side is that decorative paper, and I'll be alternating them. But before proceeding, I'm taking this stamp here, and I'll have all of these items listed in the description bar of this video, but I'm taking this gorgeous little stamp. It is an XOXO, and that's kisses and hugs all over these little square panels that are going to be the matting layers. And I am using black ink that you can definitely also get from Paper Rose. This is a really good ink if you want to do any kind of stamping and alcohol coloring, by the way. So it has a really nice pigmentation. It's my first time using it, but I'm really quite happy with it. And as you can see, it's just a scattering of that little stamped sentiment. So this is going to go on the inside, and I'll be doing the same thing twice. So once I have that layered here, on the opposite side is where I'm going to be adding the decorative layers. But what I wanted to point out was to make sure you add plenty of adhesive all the way around. That's going to be important. And then on the other side, what I'm going to do is take some low tack adhesive and just tack down the paper initially. And this is because I'm going to be cutting an aperture with a medium size heart. So I'll tack that down and run that through my die cutting machine. I'll be doing that twice. Once those are cut out, as you can see, I can now remove that decorative piece of paper, and that's going to be important because I'm creating little shakers. But I'm taking a leftover strip here, and I'm taking this over to my die cutting machine, and now I'm using the largest of the 3 hearts that come in this little collection. And that large heart is going to help create a frame. So first I'm cutting the larger one, then I'm taking that medium sized one, that's the same one that I used to cut the aperture into our little page, if you will. And then I'm taking the large heart again, and I'm cutting that into a piece of acetate. So what you're seeing me do here, I actually did a total of 2 times for this particular explosion box. So there you see one little frame, and now that acetate's not going to cut out completely because dies are not actually created to be that sharp. So what you do is you just take a pair of scissors and follow along the score line that was left behind, and that'll be plenty to cut that out. So here you see me creating yet another little frame. I'm removing the little protective layer for the acetate, and this is going to adhere on the back side of that little page that we had created. I'm using double-sided adhesive just to make it easier for myself here. So you use whichever adhesive you're comfortable with. I'm just going to go ahead and burnish that and then remove the backing. And now the piece of acetate is going to lay right on top. Now you'll see why it was that I used the larger heart. This gives me a nice little perimeter to adhere onto that little page. And now I can cover that with that pretty paper that we had cut using the same die. So this makes it all match perfectly, and it's a really great technique. Now you may have to run your die cutting machine plates more than once to be able to cut through all of those papers, but I think it's doable and it's a lot of fun, of course. Now here's the second little acetate heart. I'm first adhering that second little heart frame that I had created. So it's going to go on that panel that has the white and black. Onto this little heart, I'm adding some foam adhesive. It happens to be 1/8 of an inch wide, and it's just perfect for these smaller pieces of either ephemera or little shakers and all that. I really enjoy using it, so in this case, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And here I'm just going to add some of these adorable little hearts that you can also pick up from Paper Rose Studio. That's going to give this just a cute little shaker window. So there we are. Now that's nicely framed, and now I'll repeat that on the other side, except for this time I don't need another piece of acetate. I've already applied it, so I just add that little heart frame. So again, I did that twice, and now I can add these pages to the inside. So I just wanted to do this to add a little bit of interest. Of course, you can create those in the size that you like. I was using the dies that were sent to me by Paper Rose. I thought they were super cute. I did get to select them, and I thought it was a nice addition to this little project, of course, with all of those gorgeous Valentine themed papers. And now you get to check, of course, whether or not these pages fit nicely. Select pretty papers to decorate the other two panels. I've selected this one with the little red and white hearts. I'll be adding that to one side, and then the gorgeous thing about double-sided papers is that it makes it so easy. Just flip it over and then add the second one without having to think about it too much. Now I did supplement this with other papers from Paper Rose that I'll have linked below. These are actually from the Candy Kisses Candy Kisses collection. So what I did here was that I took another of those little squares and I just used the leftover strips of paper that I had laying on my table, and I created a little bit of a strip here, and this is about 1 1/4 inches wide. And of course it's about 1/2 inch wider than the matting layer. So I scored it at both ends at 1/4 inch, and now I'm just folding that over to create a little belly band. So this is super easy and simple crafting. You really don't need anything complicated here or elaborate. It's just a matter of layering papers, but I really did have so much fun creating this explosion box, and I do hope that it brings you some inspiration. So here again is that double-sided rose pattern paper. I'm layering that on top of that striped piece of card. And this is going to go right on top of that little belly band that we created. But what I'll do first is that I'm actually going to add a little bit of height to this. First, I'm just adding one more little strip, and that's again because it was left over. I like to make use of all of the papers as much as possible. It does add a lot of texture and interest when you keep layering them, especially when it all matches so nicely. And here I'm just adding some little foam squares. I'll be adding a total of 3 on this particular little band, adding a little bit more adhesive and then popping that right on top of that little belly band. And here is this particular paper from the Candy Treats. I thought this paper was so cute. It has all of these little stamps, postage stamps, and they each are unique and they have little designs on them. So I picked a few. I think I cut down an entire little row. And once I had the placement there, I just started adhering them. First on one end, and then I start adhering them from the opposite end, ensuring that I finish with that center little postage stamp. So there's a little caravan, there's a clock, there are keys, the little coffee cup or teacup, there's the little dessert dish, there's the watering can, and also the clock. And of course, there are many more, and they each have little sentiments as well. So this completes this particular matting layer. Just making sure to burnish that nicely as I add it onto that particular page. And then on the opposite page, I'm going to supplement with a piece of paper from the Candy Kisses collection. That's just to bring a little bit of green into this project. But here are the embossed die cuts from the Candy Treat collection. They are stunning. So I'll be using that in this project, of course. And what I wanted to share with you is that I'm also using these square frames. So I'll list those below, of course, and this is going to add a little pop of color and brightness to this project, but what I decided to do was to frame each one of those outer panels, and then for this particular one, I did create a diagonal little pocket just by taking a square and cutting it diagonally in half, and now I'm going to pop this piece of ephemera right on top, and that little scallop piece there that I'm adding to decorate did come from the embossed die cuts. So I just cut away what I did not need, just following the very curved line of that paper. So that was super easy. And of course you make these to the size that you prefer, but the one little tip I'm going to give you is to make sure that it does not supersede the edge of that little page because of the way that this has to close. After all, it is a box, so you don't want anything overlapping the edges of your papers. So here's another little piece of ephemera, and this one has the little stacks of the stack of books, I'm sorry. And then I'm also adding a few little hearts, all of them again from the same collection. And it makes it super easy, of course, to decorate because you know that they're going to match. They're just going to highlight your page even more. And it's just such a fun and relaxing way to craft when you don't have to worry about the colors. Now moving on to this other page, and I think this, I'm not sure why my editing happened this way, but I'm just creating a little pocket here. So again, it doesn't really matter the size so long as you leave yourself a 1/4 inch edge all the way around. So that way you can fold it over and then create your little gusset, if you will, for your little pocket. So here again, I'm taking another little piece of ephemera, I'm just cutting it down to size, and this is going to go right on front of that little pocket. I'm going to adhere it on all 3 sides and apply that to the foundation of this box. And here I get to decorate it further and add some more little tickets. There's a little caravan and more pieces of ephemera. Just super, super cute. I loved all the different colors and the pastels in this collection, just together with the vibrancy of the red and white. So here, back to that rose pattern paper, there's the frame, and this is actually on the opposite side. So I did 2 with a rose pattern, 2 with the stripes. So I'm doing the same thing again, just creating that little diagonal pocket one more time. Now here, what's unique about this one is that I had a little frame left over. I had actually cut it out and I wasn't happy with how I cut it. My die actually slipped on me, and that was entirely my fault, but I didn't want to let go of this. So what I did is that I used it to my advantage. I just used the portions of it that I did like, and a case in point here, I just got to frame this out. So that's of course something that you can do. Just because you die cut something and it isn't absolutely perfect does not mean that you cannot use it. So here I'm adding it to this particular page, and I'm going to decorate it using yet another die cut from that embossed die cut collection. In this case, I really like that little pot of flowers. I decided to fussy cut around it. Once I had that cut, I also took a smaller square frame and I took a leftover piece of card and added that little pot of flowers right on top, and the remainder of that little piece of ephemera that said Rose's Flower Garden I added as if it were a little tab at the bottom. So again, don't forget that you can always cut apart all of the ephemera and have it suit your taste and place it where you see fit, where you think it looks pretty. So that completes this little pocket. Now moving on to another page here, I'm cutting down a piece of card to 3.5 inches square and adding yet another frame. So I'm just going to adhere that frame right on top of that paper. And that green and white polka dot paper is going to be decorated with a little tab. That's again from the Boss Die Cuts. I'm adding that square frame right on top to cover that. And I thought this would create a cute little page on here. And on top of that, I'm going to decorate it with this gorgeous little stamped image. And then I cut another piece of card and a little frame. Now this one is 3.5 inches, but I also gave myself another little 1/2 inch tab on one end. So it's 3.5 by 4. I just folded over that 1/2 inch edge, and I'm going to be adding that to create as if it were a little booklet here. Just adhere that to the back, and it's the same paper again, so it's going to match perfectly. And now I'm adding a little magnet here. So that magnet will be hidden by this page because I'm going to now adhere that to the very edge of that little page. So the important thing here, of course, is that that paper is adhered, but it's not competing with any of the other pages there. Again, because you don't want anything overlapping over the edge. So this is where I hide the second magnet. This is going to help me close this particular little page, and it's cute and interactive, and that completes that particular page. So now I'm looking around to see which one I'm going to decorate next. I'm just going to go right to the back of that one that I just decorated. I'm now taking 2 of these frames, and these all come in the same collection of dies. And each frame has something particularly unique about it, and they're all so very cute. And this is 3.5 inches wide. And then I'm taking an even smaller one. I'm adding them both to a piece of vellum. So vellum is one of my favorite mediums to use because it looks good no matter where you place it, and it's a lot of fun. Here I'm adding foam adhesive right behind that frame. And I'm using 2 strips that measure 1/8 of an inch here. So you get to see that frame is actually 1/4 inch wide all the way around. So I'm just going to create a little pocket here. And I thought this would lend some softness to this particular page. And not all of them have to include frames for photos, but you could definitely add a photo right on top if you wanted to. Here what I did was that I pulled away one edge and I took those little shaker bits and added them right inside. And that completes this page, topped with a few more little hearts. And the one reads, "Love you so much." Now for the center of the explosion box, before adding anything else, I did want to decorate this portion. Now I should have added this frame after I added the paper that I'm going to add next, but hindsight is 20/20, of course. I am hiding a magnet, however, and now I'm matting this with a second piece of card. Again, this one was a supplemented piece from the Candy Kisses collection, but here on the other little pages I did add smaller frames. I just kept playing around with these pages, decorating them, having loads of fun. I used the little hearts, for instance, that fell out of those apertures. And on the one pink one that you see there, I just took a black pen and a white Jelly Roll pen and I added little polka dots. I added vellum behind some of these square frames. I layered them to my heart's content, and I also used some of the little cut-aparts to hide behind that little tuck in spot that I created. Super cute. And as you see, the pages match each other, but there are little differences, for instance, with the ephemera and the way that I added the little frames. And this one in particular, I left open on one end so you could add a photo behind it. And then I topped this one with a little watering can and then added a little bit of dimension using, again, some foam adhesive. If you don't have foam adhesive, you could also use hot glue. So this is going to go right on top. And then lastly, I'll be decorating that with one more little heart from the collection that says Happy Love Day. Here's the fourth side. On here, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just using leftover pieces of card. I measured the width of my little foundation page and then use little strips that were left over just to decorate this. And I like the papers with the little horizontal lines. I use that, but I wanted to use what was left on my table. This is how I tend to craft. I try to use whatever I see. Whatever's on my table is fair game, is what I always say. So here is the remainder of that frame that I otherwise would have just chucked in the bin, as I say, but instead I went ahead and used it as a layering piece to decorate this particular little pocket. Here, this one does not have a gusset, but that's okay. Just add adhesive on 3 sides and you can create an easy little pocket. And I'm decorating this with a little bingo card and the guest check, both of which are cut aparts from this Candy Treats paper collection, because again, it's double-sided paper and some of them have these darling little images, including that little airmail piece. And now I'm topping this off with one more little heart that I added 3 pieces of foam adhesive so that it would pop out of the center of that little bingo card. Now here is what's super special about this little explosion box. You're going to have a surprise box inside. So you need 4 little panels that measure 3.5 by 2 inches and 3 different little envelopes. So I've made 2 in pink and 1 in white. Now what's important here is that you take 2 of these little panels and score them on 1/4 inch all the way around. So again, only 2 of these. Score at 1/4 inch all the way around, and then the other 2 score at 1/4 inch, but only on 2 sides, and it's going to be on the shorter edge of that paper. So then fold these as mountain folds, burnish them, and also cut away at a 45-degree angle up until that score line. And this is going to make sense as you assemble it. And you can definitely slow down this video. I did speed it up just so that I wouldn't take up too much of your time. But on these other 2, cut away the corners exactly where they meet at that cross point for the 2 score lines. I hope that makes sense. But you're going to also fold and burnish all 4 sides. So you're going to have 4 tabs on 2 of them and 2 tabs on the remaining 2. You want to decorate these, so of course take some of that double-sided paper and cut it down to size so that you have 4 different panels. Now I again just use leftover pieces of what I had. And depending on how big of an edge you want to leave on here, it's going to determine the size that you cut these down to, but just make sure that you cover this up because it is meant to decorate the inside of your explosion box, so you don't want to leave that as bare paper. Take advantage of all of those beautiful designs. So these are going to adhere as one long strip. So what you're going to do is take one of the longer ones, adhere it end to end with the one that has a tab. Make sure that those are nicely adhered, and then repeat that one more time. Adhere the one with the tab onto the longer one, and so on and so forth. So you have 2 shorter sides and 2 longer sides to this long strip. Once you have adhered those end to end, you're actually going to close this off. So that last little tab is going to adhere and create a nice rectangular little box. And once you have burnished that very nicely and allowed it time to dry, you're going to have 4 tabs on both the top and the bottom of this box. So what you want to do is add adhesive on 4 of these tabs and then add another rectangle right on top. This is going to close the bottom of the box. And then you can flip that over and burnish it. And now you have 2 of the shorter tabs. You want to add adhesive to these and just fold them right toward the inside of the box. And do the same with the one side that has a long tab. And you have a remaining tab. On that one, you want to add a piece of double-sided adhesive or wet adhesive. And the idea here is that you're going to create a lid. So what I'm doing is taking one of the little envelopes and decorating it, and then I'm going to use this as the lid of this little box. So just line that up as best as you can and add some pressure to that little tab. That's going to close your box, and now you can decorate this little envelope. So if you want to, depending on how you're going to close this, you will position your little stamps and all the decorations. I wanted my little envelopes to be nice and poofy, if you will. So this one here has a bit of card on the inside or chipboard. You could use either one, and I'm just folding it and closing it because this is not going to be a gift item. It's just something to decorate the lid of this stack of envelopes. And I did switch it out. I think I had 2 pink ones. I switched it out for that pearlescent pink instead. And what I'm doing here is adding a piece of adhesive and then hiding that piece of twine right behind it. And then here's the little white envelope. I'm doing the same thing, only this time it doesn't have anything on the inside. It's just closed. It's all for effect, of course. And I'm adding yet another little postage stamp on that one. And all 3 of these are going to be on top of that little box. So the one that creates the lid, then that pearlescent envelope. And what you're seeing me do here is that I placed it on the center of the explosion box, because the one thing you want to be mindful of are your angles. You don't want this to compete with those pages because you will need to close this. So the element of surprise is that you don't know that this is on the inside, of course. And you want to stack all of these while this is sitting on the center of that explosion box. And now once you have them all stacked to your heart's content, you can definitely go ahead and tie that pretty twine. I'm using that red and white twine, and then I'm just adding a little knot here in the center and cutting away any excess. And then I did place some other pieces of those embossed die cuts, and I filled the little box with candies. But here I'm going to show you how I'm closing this one. So what I did is I added double-sided adhesive to the envelope that faces the inside and placed a piece of twine, covered it with a little heart so that you don't see the end of that twine. And I'm doing the same thing on the inside panel of that little box. Once I had that nice and secured, I'm pulling on that twine and cutting that in half so that I can create a pretty little bow. So here's another little element of this I wanted to show you. The way that I got this box to stay was that, if you remember, I had added a little magnet on the matting layer on the base of this box. So I added a second one on the inside of this little stacked envelope box, and I covered it with a little heart. I also reserved 4 pieces for the outside of the box that I cut down to 4 3/4 inches square. I'll be using those leftover strips to decorate the lid, but first I'm being mindful of the placement of this paper. So you pick the papers that you like the most, being mindful that there are 3 of each design, and then you can go ahead and adhere these to the outside panels. And as you can see there, I'm trying to avoid cutting away too much of that beautiful design with the cups. So these just adhere side to side, red and white, and then the little cups. Now for the lid, you're going to need a card that is 7 3/4 inches square, and you're going to cut it at 1 1/8 inch all the way around, being sure to use heavyweight card just as I have done here. This is 300 GSM card. And then cut with a sharp pair of scissors along the score line on the outer edge, and then also on that little outer square, beginning from that outer corner toward the crosshairs of those score lines. I hope that makes sense. So just that little triangle, and then repeat the same thing on the opposite side. Again, cutting from the outer edge in, and also the outer corner in. So it should look like that. You're now going to fold this over and burnish it. And I'm going to be decorating mine while it's still flat, but you do want to score all of the fold lines that you have created. So I reserved the third panel with those pretty little cups for the lid. And now, depending on how wide you want the sides to be, you're going to determine the size of these strips and also what you may have left over, because it's going to depend on how you decorated the inside of the box. But you want to make sure that these little triangles adhere very nicely on the corners, making sure that you also have a 90-degree angle on the corners of this lid so that it closes very nicely on top of your little explosion box. So you'll do that, of course, 4 times. Make sure you hold that until it's completely dry. And then you can continue decorating this. So I'm going to show you a little something extra here using those pretty little heart dies. I did use the medium size, cut out some little hearts, and now I'm overlapping the rounded portion of that little heart and using some hot glue, and this is using some leftover papers from that Candy Treats collection. So again, you just overlap the little rounded portions, add a little bit of adhesive, and this creates little flower petals for a pretty little flower that you can add to the lid. So I'm again continuing on with the same little frames. I'm adding 2 on the lid of this box. And then I did cut a third rectangle using stitch dies from Paper Rose, and I'm using double-sided adhesive here because I'm going to create yet one more shaker. So once I have that double-sided adhesive firmly placed on the back of this one, you can tell I cut an aperture out of that. So you can use those dies that Paper Rose has because they are graduated in sizes. They're just perfect for shakers. So if you also like the look of a Polaroid picture, you could definitely do that and then just place a photo behind this. This is just, of course, to give you ideas. So in this case, I just went ahead and used the foam adhesive as I've done throughout this project. I added a little frame all the way around, and then once again took the shaker bits and added them. I just placed them right in the center. And that little shaker mix has all those cute little hearts, so of course I couldn't resist using them. And they gave me a little bit of a run for my money here because of the static, but I went ahead and just figured it out. I took my little pokey tool and kind of placed them around a little bit, how to move them, but you do whatever you have to do when you're crafting, right? So here I'm decorating with that little flower that I had created with the little heart-shaped die, and also adding yet a little bit more of the gorgeous ephemera from this collection. The postage stamp had to go on the top here, of course. So I just created a little flower again using those little hearts. And then I'm also using that little ticket that has the number 14 on it. I'm using another circular piece of ephemera and yet another one that says the word sweetheart. So I'm just strategically trying to place these all the way around. I didn't want to waste the elements of this paper collection because they're so pretty. So be sure to use whatever you have. I'm a big proponent of saying, you know, just use it all. Don't save it for later. Because again, this is meant to be a gift for a loved one, maybe a special surprise for a party. And what better way to convey your love for someone than to give them something made with your hands that you spent time and energy and a lot of effort on? I'm sure it would be very well received. I happen to have, by the way, some little jump rings and little charms and also a little paper clip here in my stash of goodies. So I used it all. I went ahead and added the jump ring onto the paper clip, added some little heart charms, and just clipped that onto that little ticket. And then I took a piece of tulle, wrapped some twine around it, created a somewhat of a bow, and then added another little loopy bow right on top using that twine. And that completes this. I did add a hairpin with a little bead in the shape of a heart that was given to me by a friend, and then topped it off with Nouveau drops. So the reason I show all of this, of course, is to share with you that there are many different things that you may just have on hand that maybe you haven't used in a while. I suggest that you pick out the items that you like the most and then use that. Use it on your projects, have fun with it. This was very therapeutic for me. I had come back from a bit of a break from crafting throughout the Christmas season, and I just had so much fun. So I do hope that you have taken something away from this tutorial, that perhaps you learned a little new technique or just got inspired to use what's in your stash. I invite you, of course, to use the links in the description bar of this video. Leave me a comment and a thumbs up if you'd like to. If crafting is what you like, then you are in the right place. I'll be back with more projects using this collection, or I'm sorry, another collection from Paper Rose. So I'll have another little tutorial for you as well. And it's also going to be Valentine related, so I very much look forward to sharing that with you. Don't forget to visit Paper Rose Studio, and also the links below will take you to where you can find these products. It's a lot of fun to work with all of this, and I am very grateful to Paper Rose for allowing me to do so. So I look forward to more crafty adventures in this new year, and as I always say, I hope that you can be inspired and be blessed. Thank you for watching.